compilation of a whole bunch of, Jim's got it. I'm gonna click, got it. Those cameras, they do 30 seconds at a time. So I go through and they're motion activated. So I'll bring some of those together. What I tried to do is put something that's got a little bit of a story. It runs about, I think, 6 minutes long. And I think, Nikki, I don't know if you're doing all the Facebook stuff or Jim or whatnot. I'd like to get this up on Facebook after tonight. But I wanted to give, what is it, the premiere tonight. So you guys are seeing this for pretty much first time. So here we go. Is it gonna go? Yes, it is. Hold your questions till the end if you got any. So this is in Peter's yard, and now we're in Jim's shop. So it says inside and out. We've got two different styles. This is the inside box, goes inside a barn. And that is the outside box with a peaked roof. These are the screech owl boxes that I talked about. You see some top end of a bat box. There's the bat box. This one is actually out of Ladner Harbor Park. You've probably seen it there. There's Tom doing one of the first installations. So most of our boxes, we put them up on a pole with a predator guard. You can see that. That keeps the raccoons out. This was in Boston Springs golf course. I think this was on Kings Links golf course. Done some with barns as well. Got cooperation of the farmers up in the attic. There's Sophie up a ladder inside a feed barn. Some of these are really decrepit where they are. That one's out Arthur Drive a little ways. Sophie is quite amazing in where she'll climb up into. There's a map that we've got online, shows where they're installed. So you can see quite extensive. So that, I think that's Peter's camera. And this is what you'll see. This is probably from the camera I showed you. Sometimes you find an empty box. Sometimes you find pellets. Sometimes you kind of find a mess. There's eggs that don't look very healthy. And we found some carcasses outside the box. But here's what you want to find. We really try to minimize the disturbance of the owls. If they're in there, we're going to get back out pretty quick. This is the old camera. This is Peter's camera. Mine's much clearer. But young owls, they're still fuzzy. These guys are probably 20 days maybe, Jim, something like that? There's 4 in this one. This was the Kings Links golf course original box. It was before I got involved with the group. Been very productive. You can see this one from the dike when you walk past Kings Links. And then this is the same box. That's the picture. I don't know if you recognize it. That was the front cover of Nature a year ago. Now we're going to show some of the banding that we've done. This is Sophie Hindmarch. And that's Sonny. Sonny's doing a PhD. I don't know what his name is, that little guy.
Sure, no problem. Awesome. This is amazing.
There,
It's okay. It's okay.
and it's
Okay.
you're not taking that.
So the idea that the banding is done once they've gotten reasonably big, because you don't want to make a tight band on a growing owl, but not so big that they're starting to fly. So it's a little bit time critical when to get through. We leave that up to Sophie. I could tell you the story of this one. It's very interesting. There's the cameras. So we put them on that mount so we can see any traffic that comes out on the balcony. We get stuff. Now we're going to get into a 3-part video here. There's a great horned owl. This is at 2 a.m. one day. He's kind of nervous. This is at 3 o'clock. That's the guy that lives there. Now watch this next scene. Pay real close attention. It's coming. Wham! You see that? That was the barn owl that lived in that box getting rid of the great horn. I love that shot. So here we go. This is life cycle in action. Circle of life. I tell you, they're prolific. And actually, Jim just got some video from North 40 last week. Okay, here, they're at it already. But this is feeding. So the hole is intentionally tight. It keeps the predators out, keeps other bigger birds out. There's the young one coming out, first emergence. Still a bit fuzzy. I love this. It's just, I gotta go, I gotta fly. And brother or sister coming out. So that balcony, we call it the balcony, that was Jim's design, and we're really quite proud of that. It's done really well. It gives them a place to stand and to exercise and keep away from the predators. We had one dairy farmer said, "You got to build me a box so I can get those out of the tree beside my bedroom," because they were doing this all summer long. There you go. So that was kind of fun. We've had a lot of fun doing it. You saw the number of voles and rats, and we've seen rabbits go in, we've seen birds go in, there's all sorts of stuff. But you know me, I love doing calculations and all that kind of stuff. That box out on King's Links, it was full, so we had to empty it. And you kind of do a calculation on the size of a pellet and how many carcasses are in a pellet. Scale it up, figured there were 6,000 voles in that box over 2 years. Wow. Unbelievable what they're doing out there. Anyway, that's my presentation. So if there's any questions, I'd love to take them. Hearing none.
I've got a question.
Yep.
And you may not have the answer, but you may have some sense, Jack, with almost 100 boxes out there, many of them occupied. I would think that the work of the Cascade team is making a significant difference to the status of barn owls in the Lower Mainland. Has Sophie given you any inclination as to the population trends for the Lower Mainland barn owls?
She's working on it, but she didn't get it done today.
Oh, yeah. So Jim said she's working on. It's report time of the year for Sophie. That's basically all I know. And she's an independent contractor, works for a number of different people. And she's got some reporting stuff, which probably will include that. But you know, I kid around it, but really, this is just such a lot of fun to get together with guys, make sawdust, and then go have lunch and drink beer. Literally, that's what we do. I mean, so I haven't really paid a lot of attention to the answer to that question, Sid, but maybe we can follow up on that.
I think what one answer is, historically, there were several hundred pairs in the Fraser Valley, maybe 500 to 800. And whether that would have persisted, I don't know, I'm talking 10, 15 years ago. So if it's still the same number, and we've got 100 or 150 boxes out there, we're having quite a large impact.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of the things I've learned about the barn owl box, the barn owls in this, when you're locating a box, correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, but I think there's really two main criteria that you look at for a location. One is proximity to habitat, which is the tall grasses that the voles live in, that the barn owls feed on. And the second is non-proximity to a busy highway. These, and we try to have them located at least 1 kilometer away from a busy road, because they fly low over the roads and get hit. And Sophie has, collected lots of carcasses over the years. So sometimes it's a little bit of a challenge to find a spot to put the boxes. Like a couple of years ago, we were looking around the Highway 10, Highway 91, Highway 99, that triangle area in there. And there's some nice habitat, but they're so close to the highways, we decided not to put any in there.
Audrey has a question.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. How are you doing financially for all your supplies?
Remember what Jim said about the $10,000 that you have to figure out for where to go? I'm not asking for that by any stretch. We are actually in a similar position that one of the decisions we have to make right now is where can we donate some of our money? We're essentially, we got a couple grants when we started that really put a good start to this group. But our overall focus is to try to, we cover our materials and we cover shop supplies, and we put a little bit in there. We've donated to the Tom Bears Society. We've bought the bursary. We bought this equipment, but we have a little bit of a nest egg too, that we're in a position that we can actually donate some money to it, the right cause, and we will be dealing with that over the next few months.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
What about signage? Because I think a lot of people wonder what those boxes are, and signs do cost money. So
It's a two-edged sword, probably. The one down off 12th Avenue in Boundary Bear Park, it's attracted too much attention, right? So it's a fine line to walk, is to get people informed, but from disturbing the owls. Probably the same kind of thing, Elizabeth, we see your talks about the garter snakes, right? It's the same kind of thing. People often do stupid things.
but maybe they shouldn't go in parks. That's where people naturally go to.
Yeah,
Like the golf course is different. The golfers are there.
Yeah.
They may or may not care.
yeah,
People in parks bring cameras, and I understand it becomes a huge issue.
yeah.
Like people,
The map that I showed has locations, and it is available online, but all of those locations are munged a little bit to don't give people the exact location of them. Yeah.
okay, thanks.
Okay. I guess Peter's up next. I'm gonna see if. Did I stop sharing?
I stopped you. Oh,
You stopped me. Okay.
another question, you say?
Elizabeth is waving.
Elizabeth, you have a question?
You're muted, Elizabeth. Nope. I'm not sure. Oh, there's your.
No, pressing my space bar wasn't working there. Very strange. It usually does. When the owlets are exercising their wings, do you have any idea how long they do that for? Is it a day, a week,
I'm thinking it's a couple weeks.
couple of weeks?
Yeah. Those videos, the really good videos there of them are all from last year on the North 40. So we got a sample of one really in that kind of
Mhm.
good video. So I'm going to say that they were outside the box for probably 4 weeks before they disappeared.
Hmm.
Yeah, something like that.
Do the parents still feed them as long as they're still?
Oh, yeah, we've got videos. Obviously, I showed way fewer than what we've got. There's thousands of them. But those little guys are so aggressive. It is amazing to see how they like that. The parents are afraid to get into the box with them. It literally they when they're young, you see them going right in, and then after a while they just kind of throw that mouse in. And then Jim got some from last week, and the young ones are sticking the head's coming out, and the parent, am I going to get close to that guy? They're amazing. They're really rough.
That's really great that we're able to see this.
Yeah.
I think Paul was waving his hand there.
I was just wondering, what proportion of your boxes are actually occupied?
I couldn't give a number on that, but probably off the top of my head, 50%. Peter, think?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah, about that, maybe a bit more.
Yeah.
than 50.
Okay. So I'm going to start sharing screen again. Share sound, desktop, share, and then Peter's going to come up and do his presentation. And that should make it go. There you go, Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Just a couple of words before Peter comes up. Oh, gee, I was going to joke that we were going to take a break from birding and we were going to learn a little bit about opera, but the print on the screen has taken that away. Peter's the founder and leader of the Cascade Bird Box Team, going way back. How many years, Peter? 10, 15 years?
13 years.
13 years.
Yeah.
An expert on birds, Peter developed a particular interest in their songs and wanted to introduce us to the birds of BC that to him have the most beautiful songs, hence his title, Opera Singers of BC. Peter, please.
Thank you, Sid. Am I in the right position?
Yeah.
I'm good. Thanks for that nice introduction. This has been my passion, sound recordings, for a very long time, since way before I started building anything. And maybe because I lived in different parts of the world where the songs can be really amazing. And then I realized that they're really amazing here in BC. I don't know much about music. I certainly don't know how to sing. I was never trained in music. But I just find the whole business of listening and observing and being able to identify birds by ear is really interesting and advantageous, because you very often hear them, especially here in our coastal forests, without seeing them. We have a huge support for our audio work now that we can download into the phone, and it's called Merlin. And you can download the app. And it's as simple as holding your phone up and listening, letting the phone listen and getting an identification and a picture of the bird. So it's extremely nice. It's been out the last 2 or 3 years. It's very, very useful. And then in addition, there's a sound processing app called Audacity that enables you to take the sound out of Merlin. You can send it into your computer and then actually process your sound recording and clean it up and make it sound better and take some background sound out. So I've had a lot of fun with that. I was introduced to Audacity by Sunny Singh, who's doing her PhD at UNBC with emphasis on owls and other bird recordings. So it's been a nice 2 or 3 years of working on this. So I want the next slide.
Just use the arrow key.
The forward arrow key. Yeah. So this is a little bit about Merlin, and I expect some of you in the room have been using Merlin, and some of you online have been using it. It's very exciting to use it, and it's pretty good for North America, pretty good for Mexico. I was in Belize recently, and it was pretty good there because there's enough data now in the database to make it reasonably accurate. You still get a few weird things, but it's very, very useful. So it's my first bird. So I hope everybody heard the first bird. It's in, oh, the last one. Does this run?
I don't know what it does.
Oh, I hope it doesn't keep going. Anyway, it's a purple finch. It comes into our gardens typically in April, late March. And by about this time, it's inside the coastal forests, and it's nearly always very high in a tree. And it's very different sound-wise from a house finch. So I'm not going to do back-to-back recordings, but it is one of my favorites. It's quite a rich voice. It reminds me of an opera singer with big lungs. And it's often high. It's often 50, 80 feet high in the top of a Douglas fir tree. And you hear it really nicely on the forest floor. The software processing app I mentioned is called Audacity. It's free. The logo looks like that. And I just want to run this again because there's another bird in this recording. It's extremely high. You can see it on the sonogram. If you couldn't hear the kinglet, don't worry, because I couldn't hear it either. But sometimes with headphones on, you can pick it up. It's up around 8,000 hertz, which is quite high for most of us, except for children, who typically can hear it quite easily. And I used to be able to hear it, but it's quite hard now. But it's very much associated in the same kind of forest with purple finches. So I think you probably all know this is Swainson's thrush. It's found on the forest floor or in the middle story, never at the top of the canopy. It's not yet calling. It's probably here with us, and it makes a small sound, but it's not yet doing its territorial song. That usually starts in about mid-May. So although they're around, we're not yet hearing them. So that's got to be the most. I mean, how does it have that much breath to keep going for 10, 12 seconds? Just keep on going for a tiny bird. Very frustrating because you often hear them and it's so hard to find where it's calling from. Again, it's a bird of our coastal forests and it goes up into the interior. Next, we're going to do Buick's wren. I've got two recordings done about 10 years apart, both from Campbell Valley Park. It's a confusing bird because it never seems to do quite the same thing twice. This picture was at my house. It nested in a flower pot. Well, so this is a second sequence about 10 years later. I don't think necessarily the birds have been changing with time. I think it's just that they have a lot of variability in song. So now we're going to go more into the interior where there's a very lovely sparrow. So that was Lincoln sparrow. It's found at high altitude bogs surrounded by black spruce very often. And it's kind of a surprising sound because you think the whole black spruce is a little bit dead, and suddenly this sound erupts from the water's edge. So the next one is perhaps really one of my top votes. And it's from the very dry country where we have sagebrush, and it has an enormous amount of breath, so it does very, very long phrases. That's the meadowlark. This is the one I'm talking about. That was a full 13 seconds of continuous sound.
Sorry, what is it?
This is Brewer's sparrow. And it's really only found in sagebrush areas. So if you're in an area like I'm showing in the picture, then think about that you might be getting a Brewer's sparrow. If you hear this amazing call, typically you have to be in the South Okanagan to get it. So the final two birds, oh, one more sound, sorry. So the final two in my selection are what I call real opera singers. They manipulate their voice to make it richer. So in music, there's something called vibrato, and there's something called tremolo. And one of them you do on a string instrument to give it resonance and richness. and one of them the opera singer does in their throat. These two birds do exactly the same thing. And that makes things really quite amazing. So this bird I call the master of tremolo. I think you know this bird because it comes into our gardens in the winter. It's a varied thrush. Now, it turns out what it's doing is two notes very consistently at an exact frequency held for about 1 minute, and one note is slightly higher than the other, and the two waves go out from the bird's mouth and go into your ear, and on the way, the two waves interfere with each other. So I'll try and explain that here. So this is just a bit of a note on vibrato and tremolo. I think what I understand is when it's coming from the vocal cords, it's vibrato, and when it's coming from a string instrument, it's tremolo. The varied thrush does something more like a tremolo. It sounds kind of artificial when you hear it in the forest. It sounds like it's being a man-made sound somehow. It doesn't sound natural. And I think sounds a bit tinny almost. It's amazing. Slightly different pitches. The sonogram is obtained with Audacity. When you send your recording into Audacity, it looks like this. You can see the frequency roughly. It's somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 hertz. And actually these, it's very hard to see on this scale, but this is it's basically doing it on multiple adjacent frequencies. So what happens when you have two waves slightly different in frequency is one's a bit slower, one's a bit faster, and periodically they agree with each other, so you get a bigger signal, and periodically they cancel each other. So you get these little packets of waves called beats. This is very well known in electrical engineering. I'm going to get Jim to explain that later. He's an electrical engineer. Anyway, that's the general idea. This is what I found, to my great surprise, when I asked Audacity. I only found this about 2 or 3 weeks ago, when I used Audacity to expand the scale right down to a 100th of a second. What did I find? But the classic wavelets, the beats, due to these two frequencies, there's one frequency at 3,500 and one at about 3,300 and something. They're going out together, and the waves are periodically adding to each other and canceling. So you get this. It's almost a textbook classic in wave theory. I was really amazed and surprised. The final bird, of course, I realized after I prepared the talk, I hadn't mentioned the loon. So there's no way really one could give this talk without mentioning common loon. And So you can see it doing the vibrato in the voice, and it's actually, I think, oscillating its throat. So it's oscillating its throat, and then occasionally, just here, can you see where my finger's pointing? I guess I need a pointer. How do I point this?
Walk up to the screen.
Yeah, occasionally it does a single note, which is very mournful and kind of in striking contrast to this. It does a single note. I think it's sometimes a reply going on between two birds. In this recording I just played, you could also hear some of the reflection of the mountainside. So I'm sure most of us have experienced common blues. It's just so amazing. So I'm just going to finish on that thought that we're so fortunate to be in this environment and to be able to listen and look. Thank you very much for listening. And we're handing over to Thea
Yes,
after the introduction.
but first of all, we want to provide an opportunity for people to ask
Oh, yeah.
questions of you. And I'm not sure how we get our screen back, but there we go.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
And Paul,
Yeah.
there is hands up, but I see Paul's first. Paul?
Okay.
Great.
No, I enjoyed that, but I also used Merlin to pick up your sounds. It got everyone except that last sparrow that you showed. I don't know what kind of sparrow it was.
Okay, was it Brewer's sparrow?
But yeah, probably. But
Yeah.
it got every other bird right away. It's
Correct.
amazing, that Merlin.
Have you got your Merlin set for Vancouver area, or have you got it set for the Okanagan, or have you got it set for Washington State?
I don't have it set for anything other than when it came, and I guess it's BC.
Okay. You can actually set Merlin for a certain area. You have to pretend you're in a different spot,
I see.
and it thinks you're in. And you can do that. There's an override in Merlin.
Yeah.
To
It's a very impressive app, though. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Jim Ronback, you'll have to unmute yourself. Turn your audio on, Jim.
There, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I was curious as to what kind of equipment you take into the field for recording. Do you have a parabolic dish for the mic?
The stuff I did for the first 30 years of my recording involved a dish about 18 inches. And I made the dish myself in the end because nobody was using dishes at the time. So I just made it of fiberglass with the equation of the parabola and the microphone pointing into the dish and connected to, in those days, a tape deck. A lot of the stuff you're hearing tonight was just made with a classic old-fashioned cassette deck with a fairly good quality microphone going into it.
Is it a directional mic?
Well, the parabola makes it highly directional. The
You
dish.
still get, yeah, okay, with a dish. You're using a dish currently as well?
So, sorry again.
Or you're using a dish with a mic currently?
Currently, I'm not. No, currently, I'm not doing so much other than rather casually walking around with my phone with a little extra mic on it. And I find the results aren't bad. I mean, the beauty of the dish with the mic is that the background sounds are excluded pretty well. So you can really focus on the bird you're trying to get.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. I think we had one or two other questions, didn't we?
I have a comment.
Debbie has a comment or a question.
Going forward and see the pelicans there, and they're really calling out. So if anyone locally wanted to hear them.
Oh, they're calling.
Yeah, there was a couple calling on the
Are these white?
outside of the Roberts Bank terminal, but I
Only
believe
white?
up is on Sundays.
White pelicans.
There was 4 white pelicans at Brunswick Point on the north side of the Roberts Bank jetty, and on the south side, there is a half a dozen loons that were calling.
Oh, well. So, yeah, we've just had a comment from Debbie about loons calling on Roberts Bank and storks and pelicans at Roberts Bank calling.
Brent's got a question.
Brent?
Yeah, I listened to a eBird presentation
Yeah.
and he was describing that birds actually have 2 voice boxes. And so they can make 2 simultaneous notes.
Oh, wow.
It's pretty interesting.
Well, thank you, because that might explain the very thrush, able
Yes.
to very consistently do 2.
One on each windpipe going into the lungs.
Wow.
They have a voice box on each one.
Wow. That's very useful. Yeah.
Is that all birds?
Yeah.
Certain ones.
Yeah, I think that was all birds.
Well, thank you very much. That was wonderful. Fascinating, Peter. Thank you.
Yes.
You're gonna take her here, Jack? Or?
Well, you can introduce her, then I'll set it up.
Okay, okay. And finally, Thea Beckman is going to talk to us about digital flashcards. Thea is one of our newer members, both to the club and to our executive. This is notwithstanding the fact that she has a full-time job, but manages to find time to lead Saturday birding walks. She led the walk at the Watershed Park Fish Release, as I mentioned earlier. As creative media manager for an EdTech company, she's using the platform she works for to create an educational tool for bird ID. And she'll be showing us a little slice of what this could mean for people interested in learning about birds fast. Thea?
People see my ugly mug. It is a spotlight, yeah. Oh, actually, you're gonna do this first. Where are we? No, I don't have it running. And I gotta go into Zoom, share my screen. Sound on
Well, it's not a presentation.
there and F5. I think you should move it. Come on. There we go.
This. Oh. Yeah. That's, wow, it's really bright. It's good, I can't see my audience. Hey everyone, hi Zoom people and everyone. So yeah, tonight I'm going to talk to you all about flashcards as a tool for becoming a better birder. So I know digital flashcards sounds awfully boring, especially EdTech company and all that kind of jargon, but I promise it's actually quite interesting. And it's certainly helped improve my identification skills in the field. So yeah, here are some examples of the flashcards that I've actually made for some of the local birds using photographs provided by the DNCB's very talented photographers, Brian Avent, Terence Carlin, Bodie. And I just hit the right button. Should know this stuff. All right, but the story really begins in February of 2020 when my partner and I relocated to Vancouver, Canada from Cape Town, South Africa, where I grew up. I was born here, but I grew up in South Africa. What was that ping noise? Is everything fine? Okay. Yeah, so my mom has been a lifelong birder. A lot of you have had the pleasure of meeting her, and I picked up my love of bird watching from her. So from the age of 5, I was really out in the field birding with my mom, but doing so in South Africa. So there was probably not a single bird that I couldn't identify or a single bird song I couldn't hear and know. I was so familiar with the local avifauna. So coming to Vancouver, I had the ego of an experienced, knowledgeable birder, but suddenly found myself surrounded by new birds that I was completely unable to identify. This is my very first outing with the Delta Gnats, the DNCB, to De Beauville Slough, how do you say it? Slough. That's the stubborn UK in me that refuses to pronounce that correctly. But I got to meet the wonderful Tom Bears, which I'm very grateful for. So that was my first ever outing. And it was on that outing that I came to realize how very little I knew about the local bird life. Couldn't tell the difference between a fox and a song sparrow. Was completely stumped by that. Cackling goose, Canada goose, to me, they look the same. Except now I know better, but I mean, when you're new to the country. Female ducks were a complete nightmare. They were just brown ducks to me. So unless there was a male in the mix, I just wouldn't bother. And don't get me started on the Empidonax flycatchers and peep sandpipers. They still stump me to this day. Thank goodness for their bird song. Well, the Empidonax flycatcher bird song, because otherwise it would remain a mystery. So round about this time, I, being new to the country, started applying for jobs, and I got a role with a company called Brainscape, and it's a digital flashcard app. So what it does is it takes all kinds of subjects, certifications, exams like the bar exam, or, you know, if you're studying for your wine certifications, or if you're in high school doing the AP series, it takes all of these subjects and it distills them down into classes of flashcards, which you can then just download and study without having to make them yourself. Very quick and easy. Or you can make your own flashcards, or you can share your flashcards with friends. So my role in all of this was to write blogs for their academy. So articles about the science of learning, or how you can hack your brain's biology to learn more efficiently, or what foods you should eat before you write an exam so that you're not bloated or tired, or you know, just about any kind of advice that's related to learning more efficiently or hacking your body or your health to do better. I was writing for them. But, you know, after about a year of struggling with the local bird life and working for Brainscape, I had this light bulb moment where I was like, why don't we combine, you know, Brainscape as a platform for making digital flashcards with the amazing photographs that the Delta Gnats, the photographers, are taking, and create a class that can help me and maybe other people become better, faster at bird identification in the field. And so Common Birds of British Columbia was born, and this shows you the dashboard of Brainscape's web study experience. So Brainscape is an app, but you can study it on a laptop or a desktop computer. That's the web study experience. Or you can study your flashcards on your phone, and that's the mobile experience. And I'll be explaining both, or just showing you a little snapshot of each. This is the web study experience. Yeah, so this is what you'd see on your laptop. This is the dashboard showing the class. Now, this is just a still screenshot, so I can't scroll up and down, but there are essentially 25 decks worth of flashcards. With, you know, each flashcard showing a photograph of an individual species, perhaps a male or a female or a juvenile, or groups of them together. So if you wanted to start studying, you just hit the blue study button and it would show you a photograph saying, what birds are these? So this particular picture was taken by Brian Avant. Excuse me if I'm mispronouncing your surname. Anyone want to hazard a guess?
At Point Roberts, because that's where they congregate.
Mandarin ducks.
Yeah.
Harlequin ducks. So you would, okay, so everyone would guess, you know, would think of their answer, and then you hit the reveal answer button at the bottom there, that big gray one, and it would give you the answer, as well as a little bit of information that you can then take with you into the field, remembering, okay, it's a small sea duck, often seen perching on coastal rocks, striking and unmistakable with its boldly patterned plumage and white crescent facial patch. So each flashcard basically trains you to recognize the size, not the size, but the shape, the pattern, the colors of the feather coats. And then it gives you just a little nugget of information that will help you in the field, perhaps with a certain diagnostic marker to look for. One of my favorite examples is like the Northern Harrier. Learning that it had a white rump is pretty much like, look, it's the only kind of low-flying raptor with a white rump. And that really helped me. So that would be an example of a great little nugget of information someone can use in the field to identify that bird. All right, so this is what the mobile study experience would look like. Oh, stop, don't play. Eek. Okay, sorry. I kind of wanted to control the rate at which that does it, but it's not gonna, okay, hold on, give me a second. All right, it's just gonna play. Okay, so I made a screen recording, and you can see me scrolling down, looking at the different decks of flashcards. So, you know, you've got adult gulls and terns, diurnal raptors, woodpeckers, terrestrial birds. It's really hard to split them all into different flashcards without having a deck for every single group of birds or family. So it was a bit of a challenge, but I feel like I've arrived at a good spread. Then you hit the study button and it shows you your flashcard. It's going to go fast, guys. So greater white-fronted goose, and there's that little bit of information, pinkish to orange-colored beak, white face patch on the front of the face. Next one, what bird is this? Brandt's cormorant. See that the video is a bit low, it's been cut off at the bottom there. So those buttons, this is just going to keep playing while I talk. The buttons you see, the colorful buttons you see at the bottom of the page, basically give you the opportunity to rate how well you knew the answer to that flashcard. And then the app is going to repeat those flashcards to you again and again and again, based on how well you knew the answer. So if you sucked at it, you didn't know what it is, it's going to show it to you again really soon. If you knew the answer, it won't show it to you again for a long time. And then every 10 flashcards, you get a little checkpoint, a little dopamine spike of having completed 10. All right, now going into, I want this to pause. No, it's going too fast. Dang it. All right, I might have to exit the full screen. Actually, you know what, let it play while I just explain something to you guys. So most of what I've done until this point have been working with photographs to help drill people on visual identification. There's a lot of stuff we're not addressing with these flashcards, like habitats. You know, what is the bird's size relative to other birds of a similar species? I mean, there's only so much these flashcards can do. Okay, they're still playing. But one really important element that I've been able to bring in, thanks to Peter's and Ken's amazing work recording birdsong, is in fact audio. And the second half of this video illustrates how we can add audio to a flashcard to help people with that initial identification. So they can see the bird, hear it, and then they are prompted by the flashcard, what bird is this? And then you can answer. And in some cases, I mean, the bird song is absolutely fundamental for making that ID, because a picture of a bird in a tree, a picture of a bird, not just in the wild, in the field, but a picture can be really hard. It can be really hard to tell what you're looking at. So here's an example of crows, going to crows, jays, and blackbirds deck. So if you see a picture of that, it looks like a crow, right? But when you hear its call, it's unmistakably a raven, especially when the next flashcard is the call we're all familiar with, American crow. So that in that way, we're able to add audio to flashcards and improve upon the learning experience people have, drilling them on birdsong, not just of these birds, but I mean, imagine Empidonax flycatchers and warblers, which are quite, you know, the warblers can be tricky to spot. Empidonax are very difficult to tell the difference between them. So if you are trained in hearing this particular bird call, you're going to be so much more effective when you're birding in the field. So where the class is at the moment, as I said, I've made 25 decks, probably close to 300 species, which is so ambitious. That's why it's project's taking me so long. I've made 400 flashcards so far, with over 1,000 in the pipeline. The photographs have been provided by the Delta Naturalist Photographs, such as I've mentioned, and birdsong recordings are by Peter Ward and Ken Paul. The challenges have been sourcing photographs for not just a single bird species, but you want to capture male, female, or any kind, you know, any fall plumage, different kinds of plumage you're likely to see year round, and juveniles. And then on top of that, you need the photographs to perhaps showcase the diagnostic markers you're really looking for in those birds. The limitations, as I explained earlier, is that this is really a tool for helping you become better at visually identifying and listening to birdsong in the field. It's not going to teach you very much, or at least help you with, understanding the bird relative to its environment or its size relative to similar species. Yes, we can, add there in the nugget that you're most likely to see this bird in this kind of environment, but this is not a field guide. This is an educational tool you can use to drill yourself on different birds, what they look like, and their shapes. And to the point where when you're in the field and you see that bird, it triggers a memory of the flashcard, and literally the answer comes to you before you even have had a chance to rationalize it. I mean, that's how the app is really engineered to leverage your brain's biological hardwiring to remember information. Cool, that's it. Questions? Thank you. So should I exit the screen so we can see if people are asking? Okay. Yeah.
What's the business model?
There isn't one.
There isn't one? So
No.
what- is the app available, or how's that work?
Okay, so Brainscape is a live available app, but the class itself is under construction, and I mean, it's actually open and available if you wanted to pop in and take a look. It's just you'd notice that a lot of the decks don't have flashcards in them yet. I have no idea when I'm going to finish it. It's taking ages, but it's as far as business model is concerned, this was like a personal passion project. I ideally would like this to be a free class for anyone who's interested in birds. I'm not sure my boss would agree, but if it's something I'm doing in my spare time, I'm not sure he has much leverage. So yeah. Yeah, that's great. Cool.
Thea,
Yeah.
had you thought of trying to focus the observer on different parts of the province? Like in trying to pull out a bird that they're listening to or grappling with, or they're going a holiday, let's say somewhere else in the province, and they want to prepare for it. Have you thought of adding that dimension?
I mean, yes. So I don't know if you guys heard Peter asked if I thought about basically specifying different points in the province. If somebody's going, for example, to the Okanagan and they want to prepare for that trip by perhaps, drilling themselves on local bird life. I have thought about that, but actually internationally. So this class is for all of BC, which is probably too ambitious and maybe not super helpful because there are a whole lot of birds that you won't see in Vancouver that you would see elsewhere and vice versa. But I've certainly thought about this being a really scalable idea in other countries or regions. If you're going to Colombia on a birding vacation, I mean, to be able to study the birds before you go in a really easy and efficient way would be such a great way of enhancing your birding experience. But yeah, perhaps I need to subdivide BC into its habitats and stick with that rather. But that's future Thea's problem.
Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Jim, you just got to unmute yourself.
There. Okay. Are you able to accept video clips for your flashcards?
Oh, are you asking if I have video clips?
Can you make use of video clips?
Yes, yeah. So the app just recently, yes, it's just recently come to support video as well as audio and spreadsheets and other bits of media. But I don't have video, but it can support video.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions, folks, either out there in Zoom land or here in the live audience?
I don't have a question, but Audrey's got a comment up here saying, brilliant, well done. And she's quite right. That was wonderful.
Thank you. That's so kind. Thank you.
And I just wanted to know, Thea, oops.
Vicky?
Yes.
When do you anticipate commercializing it? It's something that I'd really be interested in.
I took on this project as I took on many responsibilities at a time when I was a contract worker, and then the bastards went and promoted me. And so now I have so little bandwidth.
Yeah.
I promise you it's on my, in the next year, I would like to get this done. And you'll be the first to know because you've been asking me about this class for a while. So.
Okay, thanks.
Sweet.
Okay, thanks a lot, Thea. I think that concludes our program for tonight, unless there's any last comment or question for any of our wonderful presenters. Anybody out there? No, I don't see anyone waving. Or Elizabeth, you're unmuted. Did you want to comment?
I just wanted to see, does Jack have that photo
I
of
think
the snake?
I think we're going to dispense with that, Elizabeth.